welcome back everyone. If you're new here, my name is Taylor and I am a recent MPH graduate from Columbia, and I asked, you guys answered. Today we're talking about resumes and job hunting tips, etc. So it was a very close call. The other option was for me to talk about grad school applications. So I have an idea. Let me know what you guys think. Like this video if you'd be interested. Leave me some comments, whatever you want to do. How do you guys feel about a sort of mini series, like deep dive into like all the different components of a grad school app and sort of different videos deep diving into the different pieces? Thoughts? I get a lot of questions about this stuff, so I thought it might be helpful, but let me know what you guys think. And today we are sticking with the resumes though, which is still a part of your grad school application because you still have to submit a resume or a CV when you're applying to grad school. So hopefully this is helpful for everyone, people looking for jobs, people looking for applications for grad school, fellowships, all that good stuff. So this is the video for you if you're looking for some resume tips. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do to get some more grad school, life, school, all that good stuff. Just hit the button. And before I get started, I do want to highlight that there are a bunch of channels out there that give advice specifically on job hunting and resumes and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to link one up here, I think up here, and definitely check that out when you're done here. But let's get started. Okay, so first I just want to preface this by saying that these are tips that I have used in my resumes. They have these tips, and my resume formatted this way has gotten me into grad school twice now, and has gotten me internships, jobs, things like that. So these have worked for me. I hope they'll work for you. I'm also pulling tips that I have gained along the way from Columbia's Career Service, as well as an entire professional development series that I had to go through in my Master's of Public Health since I was doing health policy and management. So they wanted to make sure that we had very strong foundations in resumes, cover letters, CVs, professionalism, all that kind of stuff. So I'm pulling tips from a lot of places and a lot of things that have worked for me so that they will hopefully work for you all. But let's get started with some of those sort of generic tips, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a dive into the different sections of your resume. So first of all, readability. You want to make sure that your resume is as readable and easy to process as possible. So what goes into that is make sure that your font is something normal, serif, sans serif font, Times New Roman, Arial, something slightly off of that, but nothing too crazy. And you don't want your font size to be any smaller than 10 point. 10 to 12 is your golden zone for font size. The other thing for readability is that you make sure you go through your resume with a magnifying glass to make sure that all of your bullets are at the same place, all of your indentations are at the same place, all of your, like if you have the cities that your jobs were in on the right-hand side of your paper, make sure that those are all in line as well. Make sure that everything is nice and square and perfect and in line, because when I see things where it's like all these bullets with just one slightly off, it drives me crazy. And if you get the wrong resume reviewer, then they might even think that you don't have attention to detail or you just don't care enough. So you definitely don't want your resume getting thrown out for something silly like that. Now, the other thing is that you do want to follow a somewhat traditional resume formatting. Now, if you're applying for a graphic design type job or something a little bit more artsy, you can stray away from that a little bit, but for most jobs, you want to stick to the 5 main sections in a reverse chronological resume. So let's dive into those 5 sections and see what we're talking about there. So the top section of your resume is your personal information, obviously your name, if you have any post-nominals, like any degrees or anything after your name, feel free to add those. It might catch someone's attention when they're just glancing at your resume. You want to make sure that when you just look at your resume overall, it's nice and attention grabbing. Your name is large at the top, nice and legible. And then also in that personal information section, you should include your phone number, your email. If you have a LinkedIn, you can include your LinkedIn web address, and then just the city and state that you're in. A lot of people still put like their full addresses. I don't think that's necessary anymore. So for your education, obviously pretty self-explanatory. You want to name your school, the degree, the month and year that you're graduating. If you haven't graduated yet, in parentheses, you can put like expected or something like that. And then otherwise you can add some bullets down there if you have like a minor or a certificate, or let's say maybe you, like example from my resume is I competed in a case competition that was at the school and won an award from that. So like you can put that under there. Very like small, minimal stuff, mostly focusing on your education. All right, so the next section is your relevant work experience. So now this is the meat of your resume. So with this, you're going to list your experiences in reverse chronological order. So the most recent first, and work your way back. And then within an individual listing, like an individual job that you're putting on your resume, you want to have 3 to 5 bullets. You're going to list the month and year that you started working, the month and year you ended working. If you're still working there, you can put through current/present, like whatever, current, present, whichever you want. You obviously want to list the company and then your position. Now, try to stay away from very generic position titles like intern. So if you were, let's say I was a business development intern, so I put business development intern instead of just intern. You want to be as specific as possible. And then you also typically list the city and state that you were working in. Now, for those bullets, this is probably the hardest part of a resume. If you have people that you trust and respect their opinions for job searches and resumes and things like that, have them put as many eyes on it as possible. Go back and forth. It takes many, many iterations to get that resume and those bullets feeling like exactly how you want them. Now, the other thing before we go into like sort of the anatomy of a bullet point is that you might have multiple forms of your resume, and those different forms might have different positions that you've had, or they might just have different bullets under the positions depending on the type of job you're applying to. For me, this just makes it easier for me to pick out which like general resume that I want for the type of job I'm applying to, and then tweak it just a little bit. So for instance, I have a resume that's very research focused. I have a resume that's very clinical focused, and then I have a resume that's more like consulting focused. So if I'm applying to jobs in like either 3 of those sectors, I have like a baseline resume ready for each of those. And so I think that makes it very easy when you're job searching, especially if you're searching for jobs that are like slightly off in like different areas, like I was saying. So that's something that can definitely be helpful. And think about that when you're making your bullets, that you have done more than you think, you have accomplished more than you think. So if you have white space on your resume, you can think of things, I promise. So with these bullet points, now you're basically telling a little mini story in each bullet point. Now your cover letter is basically like expanded stories where you're giving a problem, what your solution was, and the result. And so you're basically like selling yourself and saying you have gone above and beyond, you have solved problems, and you are a great asset to this company, etc., etc., etc. You are talking about why you're a good fit for the job that you're applying to and why you are amazing and have done such great things in the past. And so you want to tell those little mini stories in your bullet points. You'll tell the expanded version in your cover letter, sort of introducing your resume. You might even pull out some totally different stories to include in your cover letter. But in your resume, you're using 1 to 2 lines telling a little mini story of how you improved something. So, if you, let's say, we'll take an example from my resume. As an office manager, I grew the practice size of of the doctor I was working for, grew his practice size more than double. So in my resume, first of all, I don't use the words I, me, he, she, anything like that. It should all be third person. And then, so I'd say doubled practice size by implementing new marketing strategy or something like that. And you also want to quantify things as much as possible. So if you managed a team, how many people did you manage? If you were overseeing multiple projects, how many projects? You want to be as detailed as possible. If you started a new research project, what methodology did you use? Things like that. As much detail as possible in as small of a little condensed story. So like I said, this is why you want to get as many eyes on it as possible, do as many iterations to make sure that those bullet points feel perfect to you. And then you can just pull bullet points depending on the job that you are looking for. Now, these bullets are also going to be the area that you're going to tailor your resume to the job application as much as possible. So nowadays, a lot of resumes will go through an electronic screening process before they ever see human eyes. So you want to basically pull buzzwords from the job application, like from the job listing, and pull them into your resume so that you're showing that you are a great fit for this job. So, if they mention data-driven a lot, you might want to just put the words data-driven in your resume somehow. Or if they mention, collaboration a lot, you might want to put collaborated into your bullet points somehow. And your bullet points should always start with action verbs. I know that's a thing that gets said a lot, and that is pretty much it for those relevant experience bullets. Like I said, tweak them a lot, work with them, write it all up, take a break for a day or two, come back to it, see how you feel, look at some look at some listings, things like that, look at some sample resumes, and this should be the most perfect piece of paper that you can edit as you go along and things like that. I mean, you have one resume that you're using for so many different things, so you should try to get it as perfect as possible. But while I'm rambling, let's move on to the fourth section, which is going to be your skills section. Now, make sure that you're listing skills that are measurable and quantifiable. So, do you know software programs? Great, put them on there. Do you know different methodologies for things? Do you know different clinical techniques? Things that you can actually measure and say that you do. Now, definitely make sure you're only putting things on here that you for sure know how to do. If you say that you can code in a certain language, make sure you can actually code in that language. God forbid you go to an interview and they're like, okay, great, so here, code in R. And you're like, what? I opened R once and I thought that that was sufficient to put on my resume. Don't do it. So put those quantifiable, measurable skills in there. You don't really want to put things like multitasker or works well in teams or like things like that. I think that was like what was done like a couple years ago, some years back, and we're just definitely want to move away from that. You can express those things, that you can multitask well or that you work well in teams, things like that. You can express that through your bullet points. So if you are a great multitasker and can manage a lot of things at once, great. I'm sure you have displayed that somehow in your past experiences. So make sure that that's a bullet point that you include in your relevant experience if that's an important thing for you. All right, so the last fifth section is somewhat optional. You can add leadership or volunteer or other types of important experiences to you. If you don't have the room for it, you can find ways to incorporate it otherwise. So like, student orgs in undergrad, maybe you put them in a bullet point under your education without making a totally different subheader for it. Now, there are some things that you want to avoid doing on your resume that maybe were done in past years, but we don't really do as much anymore. And one of those things is putting references available upon request. You don't need to put that anymore. Another thing is the objective or the purpose at the top of your resume. Most people are moving away from putting those. Some people still have them, but typically is just going to be a very, very shortened version of your cover letter. And most times you're submitting a cover letter with your application anyways. So they're not really as important anymore. Save the space, use it to fill up with all those great experiences and skills that I know you guys have. And one last thing is to make sure when you're building your resume that you're typing it up yourself on Word or maybe like an Adobe software, something like that. You don't want to do it in like Canva or anything like that. And you also don't want to use the templates that Word has, because the reason for that is that the Word templates are typically tables. And like I said, a lot of resumes are run through electronic screening services now, and those computer systems sometimes can't read tables. So you don't want your entire resume not being able to be read by this computer and getting screened out just because you used a template from Word. We talked about your resume being readable by people, but it also needs to be readable by a computer. And pulling out those words from the job listing into your resume, that's also going to help your resume be as readable by a computer as possible. So I hope that has been helpful. I hope that you guys got some tips out of this. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments. And if you guys have any tips that you really like, then feel free to leave them below as well. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Let me know below what your thoughts are on the whole grad school application mini-series that probably wouldn't be started next week. I think next week I am going to do an overview of my new master's program at Harvard. So if you guys are interested in any of that kind of stuff, let me know, give it a like, subscribe, all of that stuff to see more videos like this, and I will see you all next week. Happy job hunting.